comics are stupid.
No Harry Potter movie is good.
And they're like, give me the Snyder Cut. Oh, sorry, just walk in front of you here. I'm gonna put my popcorn down. Oh, sorry, gotta put this here.
Universal needs to sue Sony.
Hey, I'm an idiot. I was fired from Fox. Let me go.
I'd like actually to see Venom just crush Spider-Man.
Hello everyone, we're back for episode 11, and we have an amazing director and producer and writer who's done everything. He's directed things like Billions, Empire, The Wire. Like, what hasn't this guy done? Clement Virgo, how are you doing?
I'm well. I haven't done everything. I've done a few things, but thank you so much, and thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
You've worked with Oprah, so I think you've got it. I think you've done everything.
Yes, she is a master of the universe.
I think that covers it. So I have to ask you a question before we start, which is, do you like superheroes?
I do like superheroes. And from time to time, I'll watch a Marvel movie or a DC film. I just watched the new Batman, Matt Reeves version of it, which I quite like. It's a beautiful 3-hour epic. Kind of like reminded me a bit of Seven. Had some of those Seven David Fincher vibes in it, and had some of that Blade Runner. It was always raining in Gotham feel to it. But yeah, I like my superheroes.
What's your favorite Marvel character?
Well, it's kind of hard not to like Iron Man.
That's true. It's like
and Robert Downey Jr. is killed it in that part. So it's kind of hard not to love Iron Man.
That's a very fair answer because he is the face of the entire universe. So
yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
So how did you get into directing and producing and movies in general?
Well, I've always loved movies. Movies was something that I've always watched. And I was born in Jamaica. Grew up there watching films from Hong Kong. Kung Fu films, Bruce Lee films. Spaghetti westerns. Those were the films that we would get in the third world. Those were the films that we would get in Jamaica. But as my taste evolved, of course, I discovered the French New Wave, and in the '80s, of course, we all got inspired by what Lucas was doing, and of course Spielberg, and James Cameron was amazing, and with Terminator in the mid '80s, but I never thought of myself as a filmmaker. I never thought that I could actually be a director. And then, Spike Lee told me, like he told everybody else with his films, that you could indeed be a filmmaker, be a director, because I've always written. I always wrote stories, and so it was a natural transition from being a writer to being a director. Yeah, and once I saw Spike did it when I was about 18, 19 years old with his first film, it changed the course of what I saw was possible, and I thought, yeah, I could indeed be a filmmaker as well.
So everyone kind of has a movie that really spoke to them when they were growing up, and you mentioned Spike Lee, and you mentioned a few other genres. Did you have a specific movie that spoke to you when you were growing up?
It's growing up. I mean, the film I remember seeing in Jamaica, when I was a kid, was Enter the Dragon. It was because Bruce Lee was a third. I had like three heroes. I had Bruce Lee, I had Pele, and I had Muhammad Ali, and also Bob Marley. So because Bruce Lee was a third world hero, and so when I saw Enter the Dragon, it was a film that I could still, I think a lot of people, probably people my age, can recite lines from from Enter the Dragon. So that's one film. As I got more conscious in terms of being a cinephile, Francois Truffaut's For the 400 Blows was a major influence on me. And in the film, and one of the films that I saw as a kid when I first came to Canada was a film by Walter Hill called The Warriors. I remember walking I lived in this neighborhood, and I walked all the way downtown, and they were playing this movie called The Warriors, and there was this cool poster of all these what looked like gangs on these gangs, and then I went in there, and that movie is stuck in my head. The Warriors have to get back to Coney Island, and they have to fight their way all the way back to Coney, to this day the clicking of bottles, Warriors come out to play. It's still a kind of thing that sort of runs in my head. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend you see The Warriors. I would say it's probably the first hip hop movie.
That's interesting.
In some ways.
So what was the path, I guess, to your first project, your first feature film?
The path. Norman Jewison, who's my mentor, films like Moonstruck, In the Heat of the Night, Jesus Christ Superstar. Norman Jewison set up a school called the Canadian Film Center here in Toronto, and I was lucky enough to apply and to get into the film center in the early 90s. And while I was there, I made a couple short films that traveled to festivals and that did well. So I parlayed, a 7-minute short film into that got into the Toronto International Film Festival. Then a couple years later, I made another short film that also got into the Toronto International Film Festival. That film won Best Short Film, Canadian short film. And at the time, I was working on my first film, Rude, which is a low-budget feature film. And so the school that Norman Jewison set up, the Canadian Film Center, had a program called the Feature Film Project. It was a pilot program for first-time films. And so I applied to that program. I got it, and I managed to had a chance to make my first low-budget feature film. It only cost like $250,000, and that film was like, it took us a long time to, I made it with my business partner Damon Delavera, who I met at film school, and it took us a year to get it mixed and edited, and that film got into the Cannes Film Festival, and that's what started my career as a filmmaker.
So you've done a lot of interesting things, and you've directed a lot of interesting things. What do you think? What's your favorite part of directing?
My favorite part of directing, I love being on the floor and working with the actors and coordinating, blocking a scene with the actors, and then once I work that out, I love trying to figure out how to shoot it with the DP. So being on the floor and blocking a scene and having it, not having any preconceived notions of what that scene should be, but having it come to life and having it and realizing it in the moment. Of course, as a filmmaker, as a director, you have a sense of it when you write the scene, but sometimes you show up on a set and suddenly it's raining, and you have to figure out, okay, how do I make this scene work with the rain? I've always, I spent 2.5 years imagining sunshine, but now, okay, I have to put that out of my mind, and now it's raining. And what do I do? How do I reimagine the scene? How do I make the scene work with, in the moment? So I love, the job is really kind of problem solving, that's the job, because every day something is gonna something unexpected is going to happen. But so I love the discovery of working with the actors and finding the moments and finding the scene and finding the emotional truth of a scene. And I love finding an image, finding a frame with a DP that says, oh, this is what the story has to be. This is what the story is. So I love that component of it.
And now, if you could only do one, you could either just write or you could just direct. Which one would you choose to do?
I would choose to direct.
Why?
Because when writing is very solitary. As a writer, you're oftentimes you're by yourself and you're trying, it's a blank page and you're trying to construct something out of nothing. When you're directing, it's a collaboration of a lot of people. A lot of disciplines have to come into play. You have to work with, the whole crew, costumes, production design, a sound, DP, camera, so there's a whole lot of disciplines that you get to work with, and it's and I get energy from collaborating with people, and so I love the kind of teamwork that comes with that.
So to transfer over a little bit to the writing side of things, when you write, do you have like a notebook or something that you just kind of like would just take out and jot notes in if you have an idea all of a sudden, or how does that process work for you?
Let's see. I mean, with my last project, I have a notebook, and I have my notebook with me all the time because whenever an idea would come to me, I would write it down in the notebook. And if a scene or image comes to me for the climax, I write that down. If a piece of dialogue comes to me, I write down the dialogue. And so I tend to have a notebook that I put down all my ideas in, because I find that crystallize it. And as you're writing, as you're working on a screenplay, I find you're always thinking about it. Everything in the world suddenly becomes, you see it within the same spectrum of your story. So I definitely carry a notebook and I write down everything in it.
And how long have you used this notebook for? Like, is it like do you often change your notebooks, or do you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you keep the old ones?
I have boxes of notebooks. I have boxes of notebooks because I have a notebook for when I direct. I'll write down an idea, the way the camera should move, the way the light should be, the way the actor perhaps could, enter a room. So yeah, I have tons and tons of notebooks.
Now, what do you do in your free time besides, like, when you're not writing, directing, doing all that stuff?
When I'm not writing and directing, I mean, I haven't had a ton of free time lately, but but I tend to, I like exercise. I find the meditation of sort of be the meditation of working out, I find reinvigorates me, gives me energy. So I tend, I like doing that. But I have a family. I like hanging out with my family, friends, but in terms of hobbies, I tend to, if I have time, I tend to be watching a lot of movies or reading a book or exercising. A real simple life.
It's always good. Simple is good. Now, you've also had because you've had a lot of projects, I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you deal with that? Because I think everyone has their own way to deal with it. How do you deal with that, and what do you take from, internet reviews and stuff like that when it comes to your work?
Here, I try, and it's not always. I'm not always successful. I try not to read it. Because I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on any social media at all. Cause I find that helps me not to kind of to have to deal with that. But criticism is inevitable. You cannot avoid criticism. You're guaranteed. I mean, the only thing that you're guaranteed if you sort of step into the creative realm, the only thing that's guaranteed is that you're gonna get your butt kicked, and you will get criticized, and if you persevere, you will have success. I try to protect my confidence as much as I can. What I mean by that is I try to have a kind of philosophical view about the work that I do, and I try. I'm not always successful. I try to not take it personally, but it's hard.
So you just kind of, I guess, avoid the criticism in a lot, or avoid a lot of the online negativity in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't really participate in it. I mean, I know it's I don't I don't have a Twitter feed, so no one could tweet at me.
Do you ever
I
search
don't.
your name up on Twitter? Like just
Once in a while, someone will say say, oh, you got this. Now that I have a film that's coming out, I have a film that's about to play TIFF. And my new film Brother was announced by TIFF earlier last month, and so there was a kind of burst of sort of Twitter activity, and people would text me and say, "Oh, I saw you on Twitter. I saw your face on Twitter. I saw your film on Instagram," but I never search it out because part of me feels like it's, I don't know, it's a bit narcissistic in some ways to kind of be searching up yourself or trying to see what is Twitter saying about me or the film. I don't do that. I find it's just better for.
And I mean, I think most times it probably is. I'm curious if you ever get like that, like the curiosity of like, ooh, are they, like, what are they saying about me type thing.
Absolutely. I do get curious, and from time to time I look, but I know myself. I could easily get into a wormhole of like read a couple things, and then next thing you know, 2 hours later I'm reading out, scrolling through every single comment, every single things that people say, and I know myself, and I know that if I get into that space, it might not be the most emotionally healthy thing to do. So that and that's what I mean by protecting your confidence. You got to try to stay focused on what it is that I'm trying to do, and which is I'm trying to do the work, and of course, I have core people that I show my work to, that I trust their opinions, that I trust what they have to say about my work, and I've been doing this a long time, and I've had my butt kicked like every other artist, every other filmmaker. I've had a lot of rejections, like a lot of artists. I've had my share of no's, but I've also had my shares of successes, and I've had my shares of yeses. But you develop a kind of armor and thick skin around what you let into your mind and into your into your psyche, because I think it could affect who if how you think about yourself.
And do you, I guess it takes time obviously to develop that. So was there like that thick skin and that ability to like, I guess avoid the negativity? Was there ever a point where you kind of, were in, you saw that negativity, or was it just?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there was as a younger filmmaker, I would read a review and I would take it extremely personal, and and I would have to fill up my bathtub and sit in there and just like, okay, that one hurt. That one's gonna leave a mark for a while. Um, you know, but I I try I try not to focus on that. I try because within myself, I think I have a sense of, did I do the best work I could? And I have rituals around certain things. I keep a personal journal. So I let things out through my, I write. You know, to kind of I journal about the work that I'm doing. But I don't obsess about myself. It just seems a little narcissistic. You know what I mean? Be constantly searching of what people are saying about you.
Yeah, that's probably a very healthy way to look at it, which I think a lot of people don't have. Now you do also, when you direct things, you yourself, I'm sure you're very hard on yourself with your own work, because you want all your stuff to be the best. Are there ever moments where you're watching something you've done, you directed, or you've written, and you're like, I wish I didn't do it like this. I wish I did it like this.
Of course, all the time, all the time.
Do you avoid watching things back because of that, or no?
No, I mean, I watch things back to discover why something didn't work, or what was my reaction to why did I make those choices in the moments. I have moments where I've made choices that I've been happy with, that have worked out, but I've had moments where I look at a scene or look at a moment that I've directed and realize, oh man, you missed the mark on that one. But it's all, for me, I'm always thinking about it in terms of a student. I'm constantly trying to discover and learn about cinema and about directing. So every chance I get to be on set and to work with a camera and to work with actors and to work with a crew, it's an opportunity for me, I find, to discover and learn. And what's great about television, directing episodic television, is that I can then see a scene and think, okay, how can I make a sort of make a musical moment out of this, or how can I make a thriller moment out of this? How could I make a comedy moment out of this? So I'm constantly taking the opportunity to discover and learn and try things out to see what works and what doesn't work.
So transitioning over to your production company, Conquering Lion Pictures, when did you start that, and what was the reason behind starting it?
Damon Delaware and I started it straight out of film school. And it was we set up the company because we were making our first feature film, and we needed an entity to run the feature film through. And so we created that company. And that was about, over 20 years now. And it's, I kind of do, I have a company that I run and that I create my own work, writer, director work from, both film and television. And then I have my other work, which is doing episodic stuff. Like we're doing episodes of The Wire or Billions or Empire or Greenleaf or, any number of shows.
And is there, what is within the context of the film industry, how important is it to have an entity like a production company like you do to be able to make the movies you want to make and the shows you want to make?
When I was in film school, we never really learned about the business aspects of film and television. We really just focused on the creative. I only kind of, and I'm still learning about it. I'm still learning, but I think it's important as an artist to be able to understand how to monetize your work and how to manage and how to protect your work. And the best way to protect your work is kind of creating an entity that you could, have your work run through that entity, through your production company. So I think if you're a filmmaker, if you're a writer director, if you're a producer, I think it's important, and I think it's crucial that one creates a company to make work.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're working on now, what you got coming up. So tell me a little bit about Brother.
I have a film called Brothers, based on a novel by David Chariandy, and it's a story. It's a bit of a mystery thriller story that's about a family secret that explores the nature of brotherhood, and it explores the nature of motherhood, and because it's about this family, and it's a film that we shot in the fall of 2001, and it's about to world premiere on September 9th at the Toronto International Film Festival. So anyone who's in Toronto who's hearing me speak, I'd love for them to come and buy a ticket. It's gonna, to see it on September 9th in Toronto.
And what else are you working on now? I've got to talk about some of your other projects. You've got a lot of them.
I have a project called Half-Blood Blues. It's based on a novel. And it's a 6-part miniseries, and it's something that we're hoping to shoot next year. I have a project called Cyclone, and it's about the life of Marshall Major Taylor. He's the first Black cycling champion, and it's a project that I also hope to make next year. So I have a handful of things. So sometimes it's like those are 2 things that have been announced and that are out there. But there's other things that I don't want to really say because
Yeah.
I won't want to develop them when when it's ready, when they're ready. We'll share them with the world.
Now, for those 2 projects that you just talked about, do you have distributors and stuff set up yet, or is that something that happens later on in the process?
With one of them, we have we're working with the CBC here in Canada. It's a miniseries, and the other one we're very close to setting something up with a partner. So that we're hoping to announce that in the next little bit.
That's actually very interesting. Now I'm gonna ask you a question, and you're gonna have to go into your creative side of your brain a little bit. Okay, you ready for this?
I'm ready for it.
Okay. And now, if I told you you can create any film you want, you have as much money as you need to create it. You can choose what genre and what is the general plot of this movie, and who are the 2 current actors you are casting as the leads?
Wow. I've always wanted to make a Western. The 2 genres I love Westerns, and I love musicals. And I maybe because I also grew up watching these sort of MGM musicals and John Ford Westerns. So I would love to be out in Utah, with the IMAX camera, making a gorgeous Western. And the actors that I would want are unfortunately not alive anymore.
Who are they?
I would love to have had a chance to just be on a set and just witness the genius of someone named someone like Marlon Brando, and just see the work that he's done. I think of when I think of actors, I think of actors from that I love from the past, someone like Katharine Hepburn, you know, Sidney Poitier, who I you know, I happened to have met. I was lucky enough to have met. I would, you know, he's someone, Sidney Poitier, Brando, you know, people like that. You know, Catherine Hepburn. You know, and also too, like Cicely Tyson. I mean, there's a film that I love called Sounder. I don't know if you've ever seen this film, Sounder.
I haven't seen it.
Sounder has the best run and hug scene ever filmed.
I have to check it out.
And yeah, so, you know, like someone like Cicely Tyson, but unfortunately, they've all passed.
So would this be like a Western or a Western musical?
I would say I would want to do a musical with like Brando. So like, you know, like he did one, I think it was Guys and Dolls, you know, and maybe like you know, and you know, Sidney Poitier did a Western called Buck and the Preacher. So yeah, I would love to have done that.
That actually sounds amazing. I wish there was a way to make this possible. So now I have another question, which is very different from what I just asked, but
Right.
And it may seem random, but there's a reason. Do you watch movies with subtitles?
Of course.
Do you watch movies with subtitles?
Yes, I watch. You mean foreign films?
No, just generally films.
Oh no, if it's in English, I don't watch films with subtitles. But if it's a foreign film, if it's a South Korean film, if a Bong Joon-ho film or François Truffaut film or Fellini film, of course, I don't speak any of those languages, so I do watch them with subtitles. But if it's English, I don't watch them with subtitles.
And how do you watch movies typically when you watch them? Do you watch them on a TV, on a tablet? What is this kind of vehicle?
Well, the last film I saw was Nope, and I saw it in the theater.
Do you typically like watching movies on like a phone or a laptop, or no?
No, if I'm going to watch a movie, I have a big screen TV that I have my Apple TV box attached to, and that's how I'll watch it. I find it very difficult to watch, even on my laptop, to watch a movie on my laptop. I find like I have to watch it. I have to watch it on the biggest screen I have in my house. And I've been going to more movies lately since the movie theaters have been open. I find myself going back to the movie theater. I saw Elvis and I saw Nope and a few other things. But yeah, you know, I have to watch it on a big screen. I don't think I've ever watched anything more than maybe a 2-minute, 3-minute thing, you know, like a YouTube clip on my phone. I can never imagine watching a movie on my phone.
Well, it's interesting because apparently there was a study that was done. There's a reason. So the reason I was asking is because they did a survey, or Preply did a survey of in the U.S. and it was 71% of Gen Z people use mobile devices to watch their typical like movies or whatever, and that the number of people who use subtitles just when in general watching a movie, movies are rising. So that was something interesting.
Oh, really? Why is that? That's interesting. Why is that?
Well, I think a lot of the reason is because people are just having a harder time. Like these people are on the move constantly, and people just have this phone with them. That it seems like, at least from what they got from that people have just decided this is an easier thing to do, to be able to consume content through a phone. And it's harder to hear things because the speaker system on a phone is not the greatest thing ever. And so they've been using subtitles more and more to watch things.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, I find it's funny the opposite for me. I find if there's captions on something that's English, it's distracting to me. I can't read. Like I'm hearing it, so it's like I find the text. But that's fascinating. I did not know that.
Yeah.
How do you watch it? Do you watch movies on your phone?
Very, very rarely. It bugs me because the screen's so small. If I can watch it, I'll watch on the biggest possible screen. I don't watch with captions because The problem with captions for me is they're not synced to the audio.
Right.
So it always messes
Right.
me up. I'll be like reading something and it's like, but they already said that. Now I
Said
missed something.
that. Exactly. Right. Right. So that's why I find it very distracting. Even on, when I watch YouTube, if it's in English, I always turn off the caption. I can't. It's yeah. So that's fascinating that people actually do that.
Well, it's interesting because there's also been people who started catering movies toward mobile consumption, right, and have filmed them in ways which would allow more people to watch them properly on mobile devices, which is interesting too.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's the frame is such an important part of cinema, and lensing. How wide the frame is and what you put in that frame, what story is in that frame. Yeah, for me, it's all about that sort of interaction with that image and what that image says to me.
Would you ever consider making a movie that's like more suited for mobile devices, or no?
Well, I think that when I work in television on certain shows, there is a sense that it's not so much about the visuals as it is about the dialogue, and character. And so I could see, I've made shows that, and I've filmed that way, and it's always interesting and a challenge to kind of do that. But I get excited I always get excited by creating a frame, creating that image, the poetry of that. I mean, I think when we think of cinema, we think of all the great images, like things that pop into my head, like Lawrence of Arabia or 2001: A Space Odyssey, anything by Kubrick. You can't imagine Kubrick. How do you watch any of Stanley Kubrick's films on a phone? You just can't do it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, and it was very surprising when I had read that, and so I was interested to hear what your thoughts on it were.
Yeah.
So my final question for you is, what advice do you have for young people who are interested in getting into directing and want to kind of do what you've done and what you're continuing to do?
It's always a tough question to answer, because I don't want to be trite or glib, but I think if someone wants to direct, especially now, we were talking about the phones a minute ago, you have a camera in your pocket. If you want to direct, I think go out and direct. It doesn't take a whole lot. I mean, when I started out, I was shooting on film, on 16 millimeter and 35 millimeter, which is very expensive now. The quality just even in the last 5 years of the phones are incredible. So I would say if someone really wants to direct and they're serious about it, I would say get your friends together and make a film. And someone like Christopher Nolan. Everyone looks at, Christopher Nolan is, arguably probably our generation Stanley Kubrick. But if you look at Christopher Nolan's first film, Following, I don't know if you've ever seen that film. He shot it over, I think, a year. I think it cost like $15,000. And he shot it with his friends when they were available, and he went out and made a movie. And what's interesting about Following, if you look at Following, it is the same guy that made Tenet. It's the same style. You see the same direct style, the same link, the same guy who made Inception, the same guy who made Interstellar. You could see the genesis and see the cinematic language and the same techniques. He was using the similar camera techniques when he was making his low budget, 16 millimeter black and white film with his friends on weekends. He's using the same technique when he's making $100 million global blockbuster. So I would say to anyone who wants to direct, there's no excuse now. If you want to direct, go out and direct. The problem is, of course, there's a lot more directors out there, a lot more people doing it. And the challenge is, how do you stand out in such a crowded marketplace and such a crowded environment. But that's the challenge, is to find what's unique to you, to your voice, and sharing that with the world.
So did you watch Tenet, and if so, did you like it?
Tenet was the first film I saw during COVID. I saw Tenet because I was determined to see Tenet in the theaters. So I went out and I saw Tenet, and I've seen it maybe about 4 or 5 times since. Every so often I put on Tenet and I'll watch some of it because it's such a interesting. At first it was like a puzzle, like what is this? But then as you watch it, the more I watch it, the more I like it. It's strange, you know. It's such a unique piece of cinema. At first, it's hard to penetrate it. It's like but then it's such a interesting and intriguing piece of work that you kind of like you discover new things in it all the time.
That's interesting because I guess when people were watching this, the last week's episode, the director who we talked to had very opposite views on Tenet. So it's interesting to hear Christopher Nolan being, with such different views on Christopher Nolan between.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, I mean, Dunkirk, I think, is probably one of the best films of the last, for me, one of the best films of the last like 20 years.
Whoa, that's
Dunkirk.
Big praise.
I mean, Dunkirk is pretty, just from a cinematic and filmmaking point of view, I think is just, for me, a strong piece of work. And that's Dunkirk. Tenet is intriguing. Tenet is kind of like watching a 2001: A Space Odyssey. In a weird way, because when you first see 2001: A Space Odyssey, you scratch your head, like what is this? And then, but you keep going. For some reason, you keep going back to looking at it. Because of the images, because of the ideas in it. And there's this kind of similar quality, I think.
That's interesting. And on that note, I'm not going to keep you any longer because I know you're so busy. But I want to thank you for coming and talking to us and giving your perspective. We really enjoyed it. And, do you want to promote anything? Your website?
Well, I mean, the only thing I don't, like I said, I'm not on Twitter or Instagram or on YouTube, so I don't have any socials to promote. But I will promote my movie Brother. That if anyone is going to TIFF, who's listen to us and who are planning to go to TIFF, I welcome them to come and take a look at my film Brother. That will be at the film festival, and that will open at some point in the next 12 months. And so to really look out for it, because they might enjoy it. And
I put the social media account for your production company below your picture, the thing. But thank you again for coming on. And for everyone watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, follow the YouTube channel, and rate the podcast and all that stuff that people always tell you to do. And we'll see you next time for episode 12, next week for episode 12. Thank you again so much for coming on, and thank you everyone for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.